Good afternoon, Pastor Duncan. How you doing, sir?
Good afternoon, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I really appreciate you coming on here with Jammin's Radio with us to share with us, man. Really appreciate you, your input and all that. So how you doing on a beautiful day, sir? Sunny?
Always a pleasure to be on your program, man. I'm doing all right.
Yeah, man, I tell you. So, let's, again, we just want to bring you on, just to talk a little bit about you. I know we know that you grew up out there in Jamaica. You're a pastor down there in Atlanta, Georgia. And we just want to touch a little bit on you, what's going on with you and all that stuff. So, tell our listeners here, man, what was it like growing up out there in Jamaica, the younger days, the earlier days, hanging out? What parish are you from, by the way?
Well, I'm from the most beautiful parish in the country.
Is that from Kingston? No.
No. I'm from Portland. I grew up in the cool, tranquil, vegetative parish of Portland.
Man, that's nice. Port Antonio.
Indeed, very scenic, nice beaches and rivers. And matter of fact, not many Jamaicans know that tourism actually started in Portland. Oh yes,
I didn't know that.
Indeed, when the country had its earlier banana export business, when the banana ships would go up to England, the British aristocracy would come down on the ship, and that's how tourism started, right there in the harbors of Port Antonio.
Oh, yeah. I don't know Portland that well, you see what I'm saying? But,
Yeah, I'm really from the eastern part. That's closer to St. Thomas.
Oh, yeah, St. Thomas. Yeah, I know St. Thomas.
Yeah, it's closer to St. Thomas. The community of Hector's River borders Portland and St. Thomas. Is actually a river that separates the two parishes.
Yeah.
It's called the Hector's River.
The Hector's River. Those days, man, back in the days with the rivers, man, I tell you, it was so good and so nice.
More visitors or tourists enjoy the rivers than Jamaicans because, when we were growing up, going to the river to wash was a part of our culture.
Right.
So while we're there washing, we're swimming and roasting breadfruit and catching fish and shrimps back in the days when I used to eat shrimps.
Yeah.
It was going to the river was a part.
Tell us a little bit about your childhood, man. At home and the church, the community. Were you a pastor's kid? They call it a
No, I wasn't a PK. I wasn't a PK. I was born in the late 60s. My parents were not Christians, but we grew up in a home where we could not go to our beds without saying our prayers. I still remember my mother waking us up. She would ask, "Did you pray before you sleep?" And if we didn't pray before we sleep, she would wake us up to say our prayer. And our prayer was, "Gentle Jesus, meek and mild, look upon a little child, pity my simplicity, suffer me to come to thee, amen." After that, then you could go and sleep. We had to say our prayers before we sleep. We had to say grace. We had to thank God for the food that we had. So we grew up not in church, but God-fearing.
Right.
But later on, about age 16 plus going 17, my interest in spiritual things peaked. And so I encountered a book called Early Writings by Ellen White, which was a book from the Seventh Adventist denomination. So I started reading that book, and it grabbed my attention to the point where I read it off in I think a day and a half. I was still in high school in the last part of my high school tenure. That's when my interest in spiritual things peaked. And as a result of reading that book, I started investigating seriously, other denominations that were a part of my community, because we had like Baptist and Methodist and Quaker. This high school I went to was founded by the Quakers, the Happy Grove High School in Portland. You know, so we had part of school life was to have devotion and have chapel and that kind of thing. You know, it's not like here in the States where certain things are forbidden.
Right.
You know, we had to go to general chapel and we had to do devotions and all that kind of stuff. You know, so that's basically where my spiritual foundation started. Actually, I read myself into the Seventh Adventist Church. I became a Seventh Adventist because of literature. You know, it wasn't a pastor having a crusade or an evangelistic series or anything like that you know, got me baptized. I studied on my own when I was convinced about the truths taught by the Seventh Adventist Church. I requested my own baptism. And so I started my Christian journey in 1984. I was baptized on May 14th, 1984.
Oh, that's very good. By the way, everybody, we're talking to, hanging out with the professor here. It's on the conversation, jaminsradio.com, where we're talking to Pastor Venton Duncan. He's a Seventh-day Adventist minister down there in Atlanta, Georgia. And we're just going back, just talking about him and his life and what brought him to the ministry. So you said that you actually, this is very interesting, though, that you actually read your way. Because I think that's what's lacking nowadays, Pastor. People, we don't read enough. We hearsay. And we take little bits and pieces, but we really don't read for ourselves, you know, as you said, to sit there and study it. And even when you study the Bible, you know, I mean, it does speak to you, and you have to be able to connect up the dots. So,
yeah, that's correct. We actually live in a world where people are intellectually and mentally lazy. You know, scientists say we are really only using 10% of our brains, and when you really look at some people, you wonder if they're using their 10%. You know, it's and especially with this age where everything is at your fingertip.
Right.
You know, and even when things are at your fingertip, people are still not investigating. You know, we live in a society where people depend on others to do the hard work. And when they go and do their research and bring it, you know, people don't even check it out to see if it is so or not. You know, they swallow it hook, line, and sinker. You know, so people are lazy to think, lazy to research, you know, lazy intellectually, you know, because, you know, God didn't really call us to be reflectors of other men's thought. He called us to be thinkers. You know, not many persons think, and so people have become lazy mentally. And now we have gadgets doing everything for us.
Right.
You know, you go to school and you're doing algebra or calculus or whatever mathematical problem you're doing. You have a gadget to help you work it out. You know, back in the early days when we were in high school, you know, we could hardly use a calculator.
Right.
We couldn't take it into an examination.
Right.
You know, if you do have one, you couldn't take it. You know.
Yeah.
These days you have these scientific calculators that calculate everything for you. I mean, your smartphone comes with a calculator.
Right.
You know, not the days when we used to sit down and work out our math problem. You talk about long division. You know.
Right. I remember those days.
You know, you have to work it down to its very last detail.
Yep.
You know.
You remember those timetables, though? We had to recite and say the timetables, the 2 times table, all the way up to your 25 and the square roots and stuff like that, you know?
But better than that, remember that these things were, most of our exercise books had them on the back.
Yeah, they did.
On the cover. Yeah. And not just timetables, but measurements.
Right.
You know, you know, we had these information, you know, but things and times have changed. You know, the curriculum in schools have changed, and like I said, you know, people are no longer using their brain power. You know, and rather than thinking that we're getting smarter because we have these gadgets, we're actually getting, you know, not as smart as we think we are, because machines and gadgets are doing all the thinking and problem solving for us.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. By the way, everybody, hanging out with Pastor Venton Duncan, a Seventh-day Adventist minister down there in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, school. Now, after you read your way, college. Tell us about your college life, your college experience out there.
Well, that's an interesting episode of my life that I plan to actually put in a book one of these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you should, man. Yeah.
I people have always encouraged me to write. They said, man with your experience and thinking, should write more. I use social media platform a lot, to express my thoughts on issues, social issues, contemporary issues, spiritual issues, etc., etc. But I plan to do some writing, not long from now. But when I became an Adventist in 1984, a young, dynamic, didactic pulpiteer, pastor, young preacher came into my community, and I befriended him. And so we hung out together, we would go into the community and do evangelism, we would give Bible study, we would do witnessing, etc., etc., etc. And having formed that relationship with Pastor Isaac Lewin was his name, we bonded, and we used to study the Bible, and I used to watch how he conducted, Bible study, and how he would reason with the people, logically and intellectually. He was not just a preacher. He could hold a conversation with scientists, atheists, you name it. He was a very, very smart minister. And I used to admire how he, reasoned scripture, how he defended, doctrines and all that. And I said, man, this man knows how to handle the word and how to handle people when they object to certain things. He would have a text for everything, and that caused me to think, and I remember one day he said to me, Duncan, I believe you would do well in the ministry, because I learned so much from him. He would sometimes, when we go on the mission field, he would say, you conduct the Bible study. He wanted to see how I was doing. And, one day he said to me, man, you seem as if you're cut out for this thing. I said, is that so? And we laughed about it. And he encouraged me. He said, man, you need to think about it. By now I was 17 plus, going 18, and he really caused me to start thinking about it. And, we talked and we talked and we talked. And one day the conversation got more serious, and he said to me, listen, man, I believe God is calling you to the ministry. And he went into his collection of coats and blazers. He was a man who loved to dress nicely. And he took out a blue blazer with gold buttons and a blue tie, and he said, I am giving you this coat. He said, I am not Jacob, and I know you're not Joseph, but I am giving you this coat as a symbol that I believe one day you're going to become a pastor.
Wow.
And the rest is history.
Wow. That's very good, man. That's a good story.
I grew up in Portland. My parents didn't have money. We were not affluent. We were poor, for want of a better word. We were not rich and increasing goods. And so when I finished high school and got my external exams and all that, I didn't have money to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought of the way to my upward mobility. How in the world am I going to get out of this rural village in Portland and make something of myself? So I said, you know what? I'm going to prove God. You just started, you're a young Christian, so you want to prove God. So I went and I took the test for the Jamaica Constabulary Force. And I also sent my application to then West Indies College. The West Indies College before it became NCU, Northern Caribbean University. And I was praying one day and I said, Lord, I need to move on with my life. If you want me to become a pastor, let the college then, no university, accept my application before the Jamaica Constabulary Force called me. And I went, did the test, sent out the application, and God would have it tough that I got my acceptance letter from the college. And so I headed off to Mandeville. Back in those days, things were tough. And so I became a working student. So I actually worked my way through college, university.
Wow, that's good, man. That's a good story. That's a good story, man. That's a good story. JCF, so you actually took the test for the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
That's right. And I also sent my application down, and the application acceptance letter came back before the result of the test.
Wow. I tell you, man, your steps are ordered, Pastor.
So hadn't God wanted me to enter ministry, I would have become one of Jamaica's best crime fighters, I believe.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think I would have ranked with some of the top men who you see in the country because, I grew up in a disciplined life. Order, law and order was a part of our home. We had a father and a mother who never joked. We had to walk right, and the path of rectitude was always something we had to focus on. We discipline. My father believed that you should not spare the rod and spoil the child. So we grew up with that kind of, regimented, disciplined lifestyle, so naturally, hating to see crime and violence and all these things was natural part of my being.
Wow. That's very good.
And I learned to read from very early. I think as far back as I can remember, at age 3, I was reading, books that older children could not read because my mother insisted that all of her children should learn to read early. I, being the eldest of 6 children, I learned to read from I was like 2 plus, almost 3. And reading was always a strong part of my character and personality. I love to read,
Yeah, that's good. Wow. By the way, everybody, hanging out with the professor here with Pastor Venton Duncan. He's Pastor Venton Duncan. He's a ordained minister down there, Seventh-day Adventist minister down there in Atlanta, Georgia. Just going back to his story, man, I tell you, he has a very interesting story here. So, now that you're a pastor, Pastor Duncan, you have a congregation that you have to sort of oversee. And I know you do counseling. What are some of the stuff that you do as part of your pastoral duties? Is it counseling? Is it what are some of the stuff that you guys do?
Well, a certain Adventist pastor is all things to all people. You sometimes have to assist with just about everything in the lives of your members. Sometimes you're not a doctor, but you're playing the role of a doctor. You're not a lawyer, but you're giving legal, advice. The pastor who is a true shepherd, he's involved in every facet of the life of his sheep. And when you are a pastor who shows great interest in the people, the people trust you to give them advice on just about anything. From the cradle to the grave, you are involved in the lives of people. And from time to time, you encounter, members and non-members with different situations, different experience, and they want, people value the opinion of the pastor. You know, he's a people person. He's supposed to be a people person. You know, and he's not just a pastor for the church. He's a pastor for the community. You know, the philosophy of the Seventh Adventist pastor is that he's pastor for the community, not just the Seventh Adventist pastor. You're pastor for the community. You have to sign documents for people. You have to write recommendations for people. You know, people want to, you know, get their firearm. You have to do character, write stuff on their character and all that kind of thing. You know, some of us become justice of the peace, and so you're deeply involved with the life of your community and the lives of the people. You know, and so counseling become a natural part of your ministry.
Right.
You know, people from marital to funeral to baby blessing to you name it. You know, premarital, you know, postmarital. You know, you sometimes sit on committees and boards, you know, in the community. You know, you're involved in the lives of, you know, police, fire people, you know, different people. You're so vastly involved in all kinds of stuff, you know, so you're always called upon to render service, you know, in different areas of daily living.
Yeah, that's very good. You know, Pastor, one of the questions I have for you here is that if you were to live your life over again, what would you choose? What would you keep, and what would you change? But I get the feeling that we already know the answer, but go ahead, answer that. If you had to live your life over again, man, I mean, what would you change, or would you still be a pastor?
You know, that's an interesting question, because, you know, my philosophy is that you do not live your life regretting anything. You know, everything that you have gone through is a part of the process of making you who you are. You know, for sure, I would do some things differently, because now you have what is called hindsight.
Right.
You know, you can look back and said, well, had I done this differently, you know, the result would have been different. But then, you know, all things work together for good to them that love the Lord and are called according to his purposes. You know, when it comes to being a pastor or the ministry, it's not something that I have chosen. It's something that chose me. You know, you believe in divine destiny, and you believe in the call of God. You know, the way I saw things working out up until this day, it must be that the Lord chose me for this thing. And that is my conviction. Yeah. You know, and that is why when you have distinguished yourself as one who is spiritual and one who takes the call of God seriously, that's when you are ordained by your church. Because when you're ordained for life. It's not something you can take off and put on, like you take off your clothes and put it back on if you so desire. It's a call on your life, and you have to recognize that this call is a serious call. You know, it is not something you do for a monthly salary or to be recognized and rewarded by men. It is something you do because there is a divine unction. You know, there's a divine compulsion. You know, sometimes you might not be in your ministerial, ecclesiastical operation or apparatus. You just casually, and you're moving amongst the people just like everybody else. And from out of nowhere, someone begins to ask you if you are a pastor or something. Because even though you're not in your suit and tie or your collar and look like the reverend, because of how you conduct yourself, you know, people sense that there's something different about this person. He must be some form of clergy, some form of Christian, you know. And it feels good when you don't look like what people feel, that because of how you conduct yourself, because of the nature of your conversation, because of your decorum, because of how you deal with certain things, people feel that, yeah, this must be a spiritual man.
Yeah.
And they would ask, you know.
Wow. That's good stuff, Pastor. That's very good stuff. By the way, everybody, we're talking to Pastor Venton Duncan, Seventh-day Adventist minister down there in Atlanta, Georgia, and he's just sharing his life story with us. Now, we know that you went through college and you went through West Indies Teachers College, or now Northern Caribbean University. We know that kids nowadays, I mean, and I'm sure you provide guidance and advice to a lot of people who comes and seek your counsel. What would you say to somebody who's struggling to, say, complete college, you know, do not have the support of their family to support them financially? What would you say to that person? My mother always said, pray on it, my dear. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, praying about it is always a good thing. But one of the things that drove me, and I have encouraged young people to keep motivating themselves, you have to have inner drive. You have to have something we call ambition. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to have dreams and aspirations. Mm-hmm. You should not go to college or want to go to college because your parents want you to, or somebody else wants you to. You should see the need for education, because education means liberation. You know, one of the way to move up, you know, in achieving your dreams and your goals and being in a better position to take care of yourself is to become as educated as you can. You know, formal education is important. You know, going to college and getting a degree, or you know, going as far as a doctorate degree is something that makes you more marketable. But at the same time, if you're not intellectually inclined, if you don't have the intellectual capacity to earn a degree, you know, you can earn a skill, you know, that can make you earn a decent living. And as a matter of fact, sometimes the more skilled you are, you may find that you're maybe able to earn more than those who are literate and just having degrees. Because to be honest with you, not everybody is going to be intellectually inclined. Some people are gifted not with their brains but with their hands. You know, so learning a skill, even if you have a doctorate degree, if you can learn a life skill, you know, it is always a wonderful asset to have. You know, but you need to have that inner drive. You need to have ambition. You need to set goals for yourself. You know, tell yourself that I want to be the first person in my family to graduate from college. You know, you have to dream big. You know, don't tell yourself because you don't have money and your parents don't have money, you can't make it. It is not true. Many of us are byproduct of our deep desire to become somebody in life, our deep desire to break the glass ceiling, our deep desire to change the status quo. You know, we grew up in the country boys, you know, and a lot of people felt that, you know, many of us would not amount to anything. Right. You know, our parents weren't rich and have it, you know, and so they think that because you're poor, you're going to be left behind. But that is not true. You know, Jesus, for example, was born in Nazareth. Back in his time, the saying was, can no good thing come out of Nazareth? You know, we've heard that kind of saying in our time growing up in our communities, and people felt that because you belong to a certain, you know, part of the society, you couldn't make it. But it is not true. It is not true. Many of us have defied that nonsense that because you're born poor and you're poor, you're going to die poor. You know, no. You can visualize, you can actualize, you can envision yourself, you know, achieving that dream and that goal that you set for yourself. And when you come upon obstacles, you know, difficulties, I mean, these days, students can access student loan and all that kind of stuff, but you should never allow financial difficulties to distract you from your goal and your dreams. It may take you a longer time to achieve it, but make sure you achieve it. And one of the things that I love about a person with drive and vision and dreams is that you're never satisfied until you accomplish.
Absolutely.
You're always hungry. You go to a graduation and you see people walking down that red carpet and receiving their diplomas and their degrees. I still love to read autobiographies, and to read how people overcame obstacles, how they overcame, difficulties, I had to work and study, and I believe that the people who work and study enjoy their achievements more. They appreciate where they are now in life because it wasn't handed down to them. They had to work hard, treat time as hard than those who were born, as we would say in Jamaica, with gold spoon in their mouth,
Right.
I grew up with a father who would say to us, man, you got to learn to suck salt through wooden spoon.
Right.
And you have to learn how to endure and persevere. You should never give up on your dreams and your goals and your aspirations. Pursue them vigorously. Pursue them. One of my professors, he said, man, if you want to make it in life, you have to practice what is called delayed gratification. Meaning, when everybody else is out there having fun and carrying on, you know what your goals and your dreams are. He said, yeah, I mean, heights of great men reach and kept were not attained by sudden flight. But they, while their companions slept, were upward toiling through the night. A lot of my friends, were on the basketball field and they were doing all manner of stuff. And I was there in the library putting in the extra hours. So when the time of, when the time came for exam and for all of those things, I was always ahead of the class because I put in the time. Yes, I played sports. Yes, I played basketball and table tennis and all that. But when it was time to study, it was time to study.
Wow.
And nobody could distract me from study time. It was study time. And a lot of our young people today, they are distracted by so many things. They are not focused. And as a result of not being focused, you can lose the drive and desire to excel and to make something of your life.
One of the things that sort of resonates with me is I just look at your story and where you are right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the foundation that you got growing up out there in Portland, in Hector's River, that provided the impetus, the vibes, the foundation for you to do exactly what you're doing right now.
That is true. That is true. Also, when you become a child of God, one of the things you learn early in life is that God has a purpose for your life. Nothing happens by happenstance or accident. There is a divine purpose, And once you have a relationship with God, you're always searching for that purpose. You're always looking to do what God has placed you on this earth to do. One of my favorite authors, Ellen White, says, as sure as there's a place in heaven for you, there's a purpose on earth for your life. So you have to find that purpose. And one of the things, Prof, is that a whole lot of people who are successful in their professional life are not really happy. And sometimes we mistake success for happiness. A man will spend all of his life being a medical doctor. But when you get to know him, he will tell you, this was not my passion. My passion was engineering.
That's amazing.
What is your passion?
Right.
What is it that you feel passionate about? What is it you want to do? You know, people, the thing you make a living from is not necessarily your passion. Right?
Deep.
Right?
Yep. I'm getting
the
that.
thing we make a living from is not necessarily our passion. But it provides bread on the table, a roof over our head, clothes on our backs, we take care of the bills, so we keep doing it.
Yeah.
But it is not our passion. This is not what we wake up desiring to do.
Yeah.
A whole lot of people are going to work every week, every day, and they are not happy. They only keep going because it takes care of the bills.
Yeah.
If more of us would pursue our passions, we would have a better world.
Yeah. You know, that's wise saying, Pastor. That's very wise. You know, I mean, I always tell, I like numbers. I'm a numbers guy. And one of the things I always tell my kids is that you have to find something that you like. Don't do what I do. Because you have that passion for it.
Exactly.
So we do have to guide and to, guide our kids or young people in the right direction.
Exactly.
Pastor, I tell you, man, you are a wise man. But any final words from you, sir?
Well, Prof, we live in a world where things are not getting any better. And I would encourage all young people, to find your passion, to pray to God and ask Him to guide you into what He really wants you to do, and find that niche in life, and do it with all your might. Dream big. And don't let anything distract you from your purpose, from your life goal. And one of the things we need to guard against is to allow people's opinions to influence us. We hear the story about the man and his grandson who was going to sell the donkey. And they started out with one purpose, to take this donkey to the market and to sell the donkey. But while they were en route to the market, several groups of people stopped them to give them advice. One group said to them, "Oh, boy, you should let your grandfather ride the donkey." Another group said the grandfather is a wicked man because he should allow the boy to ride the donkey. Along the way, another group said both the grandfather and the grandson are wicked. They should carry the donkey.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
And the long and short of it, Prof, at the end of the day, they did not get to sell the donkey. They did not reach the market because they stopped to do what each group said to them. They lost focus by paying attention to the opinion of others. I read a story about a group of frogs who were traveling to a specific destination. Frogs love to play in water, and so they were traveling for a long time, didn't see any stream, any river, anything, and they actually came upon a well, and these younger frogs were behind, and so they decided that they would go into this well and to have a swim. Unfortunately, the well was very deep, so the others decided that they would not go because it was going to create problem. one particular frog, he said he was going to take a swim. Time was hot and he needed to cool off. And so he went into this well which was too deep. He could not get out. And so news got to everybody, and everybody came, and they were trying to offer their advice how to get him out and how he could come out. He tried and he tried and he tried. And he never made it out of the well at all. And so everybody left him. They started saying to him, it's hopeless, it's useless, he's not going to make it. But somewhere in his heart, he knew he could get out of that well. He said, if I could get in it, I can get out of it. And he never stopped trying until he finally got out. And so report came to the group that such and such made it out of the well. And the question was asked of him, how did you make it? Everybody left you behind and they all said you were hopeless and you were not going to make it. And the grandfather said, the thing that the rest of them don't know is that this particular frog is deaf.
I'm sorry.
What is the moral of the story? All the discouraging things that were said by his contemporaries did not register. Even though they left him behind for dead, he eventually made it out of that deep well. Why? Because he never heard all the discouraging, disheartening things that were said by his contemporaries. How do we apply that? Sometimes we have to be like that deaf frog. On life's journey, we will hear people saying all manner of things. Oh, he's not going to make it. Oh, he's not going to amount to anything. Oh, he's too poor. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's that. We have to become deaf to the negative energies and the negative vibes, even of our own people, those of our own household, those of our own families, those of our own church, own congregation. We have to become deaf to the negative energies that people pass on to us. Stay focused on our goals, our dreams, and our aspirations, and trust me, by the grace of God, we can accomplish those things that we set out to accomplish.
Wow. Pastor, thank you. Thank you, sir. By the way,
you're very welcome.
thank you, sir. On that note, thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate that. All right?
No problem, man. Anytime. Blessings.
Yeah,
all
blessings.
the best.
You will talk. Thank you. By the way, everybody, that's Pastor Venton